Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. I would like to say thank you for coming to this presentation. It's great to see you all. First of all, let me introduce the member of this group. The first speaker is Nurul Hikmah. The second speaker is Dea Nur Azizah. The third speaker is Kristiani Irma Kadang. The fourth speaker is Syarifah Alfira. The fifth speaker is Citra Ainun Arif. The sixth speaker is Wardah. And the last speaker is Stephanie Hanastasia. I will let Nurul Hikmah to present her presentation.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurul Hikmah and I'm the first speaker and I would like to explain my material. Language in society or society in language. First, note in my preface how prevalent trend in linguistics have marginalized the study of the social role of language. The second, the purpose of this chapter is to explain why two nations of language and dialect are fundamentally social and not linguistic contracts. And the next, language 5 dialect. First, the term dialect has generally been used to refer to a subordinate variety of a language. For example, we are accustomed to saying that the English language has many dialects. Second, a regional dialect is a very associated with a place such as the Yorkshire dialect in England or the Bavarian dialect in Germany. Dialects of a language tend to differ more from one another the more remote they are from one another geographically. And the last, any variety is part of a continuum in social and geographical space and time. Thank you.
Language and dialect in Papua New Guinea. A primary example from Northwest New Britain in the Pacific region will illustrate the problems in applying purely linguistic criteria in deciding what counts as a language or dialect. The Pacific is a good place to begin because it is a vast, it have been even greater before European contact. In many parts of the region, there are extensive chains of interrelated varieties with no clear internal boundaries. The Annam language, spoken in northwest New Britain, is a member of non-Austronesian family and is not lessly related to any other language known in Papua New Guinea as far as we can tell at the moment. In fact, the Annam-speaking people claim theirs is the original language of the area. This is probably correct because it is also likely that Annam is the sole survivor of a group of non-Austronesian languages which were once spread over a wider area of New Britain. Moke is most closely related to Arya and many Moke, especially older men, know a fair amount of Anem. Due to their interaction with Anem speakers, Moke and Anem now share certain linguistic features to the exclusion of the neighboring language. The CSC language functions widely as lingua francas in this area, and most people speak either Lucy, Coast, or Cabana well. Any estimate of the number language spoken in an area like Papua New Guinea is fraught with difficulties due to the problems inherent in defining terms such as language and dialect. The very concept of discrete language is probably a European culture artifact fostered by processes such as literacy and standardization. Any attempt to count distinct language will be an artifact of clarificatory produce rather than a reflection of communicative practice. Lexicostatistics will not yield any non-arbitrary technical definition of terms such as language, dialect, or family. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Kristiani Irma Kadang, and I will explain about language and dialect in Europe. Other examples from Europe can be taken to illustrate the arbitrariness of linguistic criteria and the importance of social factors in deciding what counts as a language or dialect. Some classic cases are the West Romance and Germanic dialect continua. The West Romance dialect continuum stretches through rural communities from the Atlantic coast of France through Italy, Spain, and Portugal. In a sample of 1,000 words from Norwegian, as many as 50% of the words are identical and another 25% are variants of the same form. A further 15% have the same pronunciation but are spelled differently, while only 10% are essentially different. Some of the superficial similarities can be seen in this example from Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish. Okay, now some linguists have found the terms autonomous and heteronymous speech varieties useful as alternative labels to language and dialect. Thus, we can say, for instance, that the Dutch dialects are dependent or the heteronymous with respect to Standard Dutch, German dialects to Standard German, etc. This means that because speakers of German watch German TV or talk Standard German in school, read in Standard German, they look to Standard German as a reference point. There will be more linguistic similarities between the varieties of German and Dutch spoken close to the border between those two countries than there will be between Standard German and Standard Dutch. Nevertheless, a standard language serves to create a feeling of unity among the speakers who take it as a reference point, particularly those who speak varieties far removed from one another geographically. Thus, for speakers of Cockney English in London and speakers of local dialects in Tyneside in the northeast of England, the linguistic differences may be so substantial as to prevent easy spoken communication, but both groups would say in a larger sense they speak the same language, since both have Standard English as a superordinate variety. The term is employed for a variety that is autonomous, together with all those varieties that are heteronymous upon it. Often due to political developments, formerly heteronymous varieties can achieve autonomy, as is the case with Afrikaans in South Africa, which was standardized in the 1920s and recognized as a language and not a dialect of Dutch. So that's all from me, and the next material will be presented by Sharifah.
Okay, language, and dialect. In point one, as we can see, similar sentiments had been expressed earlier by Noah Webster when he authored his Dictionary of American English and consciously employed spelling for certain words which were different from British English norms, color, and criticized. And the second point, Baker noted that Australians have to work out the problem from the point of view of Australia, not from the viewpoint of England and of the judgments she passed upon our language because she didn't know it as well as we do. Still, it was a long time before many Australians were to feel confident about sounding Australian, and many still don't today. And the last point, a dialect continuum can also be primarily social rather than geographical in nature. A good example is found in Jamaica, where at one time those at top of the social scale the British spoke English, while those at the bottom spoke Jamaican Creole. And the next slide is accent versus dialect. An accent consists of a way of pronouncing a variety. People have strong views and accent, including the idea that it is always other who have accent and never themselves. Strictly speaking, however, it is impossible to speak any variety without some accent. And the second point, a dialect, however, varies from other dialects of the same language simultaneously on at least three levels of organization, pronunciation, grammar, or syntax and vocabulary. Thus, educated speakers of American English and British English can be regarded as using dialects of the same language because difference of these three kinds exist between them. And the next material is Citrayan Arif.
Academic material is register and style. First point, we have seen that we can regard varieties as a clustering of features in addition to regional and social dialects. So other varieties often discussed by sociolinguists are register and style. While regional dialect refers where we come from and social dialects what our status is, register gives a clue about what we are doing. Uh, the, the second point, speech regular use for the high status person is more elaborate than that used for lower status persons. The third point, the so-called mother-in-law language found in most of the Aboriginal language of Australia is another example of register variation. And the last point, a notion relative to register is that of style, which can range from formal to informal depending on social context, relationship of the participants, social class, sex, age, physical environment, and topic.
Speech communities and communicative confidence. In fact, the very extent of language critically depends on the availability of a social group who claims a variety on their own and maintains its distinct fitness from the first spoken by its neighbor. Such a group can be called a speech community, and the conventions they share about their speech variety can be called communicative confidence. The notions of speech community and communicative confidence are fundamental to understanding the ways in which social groups organize the linguistic repertoires. A speech community is not necessarily constituted with a language community. Patterns of social interaction often transcend language boundaries. This, the so-called school linguistic introduced the notice of speech bond, and speech-borne language bond, with sport bond involving shared ways of speaking which go beyond language boundaries, and speech-borne relatedness and the level of linguistic form. Successful conversation for many English speakers involves filling and gaps with thought. Silence, in other words, is regarded as backward. This is not true in all English-speaking communities, however. Talking about the weather is a stereotype often associated with speakers of British rather than American English. There are obvious reasons why the weather proves to be such a common topic in Britain. The term communicative confidence is used by sociolinguistics to refer to a speaker's underlying knowledge of the rules of grammar, understood in the widest sense to include phonology, grammar, lexicon, and semantics, and rules for their use, the sociality of variety, circumventions. That's all for me.
Language, society, and reality. Different words, different worlds. There is no necessary one-to-one relationship between language and society. As a working premise, however, we can assume there probably aren't any speech communities in which aspects of society have no impact on language whatsoever. It is often said that the vocabulary of a language is an inventory of the items a culture talks about, and has categorized in order to make sense of the world. However, language is not simply a reflection of some external objective reality which get carved up in different ways in different languages. Language help us to make sense of the world. Categorization of the world by language is an ongoing social activity since new things have to be named. That's all for me. Thank you.
That is all our presentation, and thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.